Welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast, the photo imaging industry's leading news source. Here's your host, Gary Pageau. The Dead Pixel Society podcast is brought to you by Media Clip, Advertech Printing, and IP Labs.
Hello again, and welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. I'm your host, Gary Pageau, and today we're joined by Roy Osing, who is an entrepreneur with 40 years of experience, and Roy is coming to us from Vancouver today. Hi, Roy. How are you today?
I'm fine, Gary. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
So you have a long history as an entrepreneur who has built up to a major multi-billion-dollar company, right? So tell us a little bit about that journey before we get into our topic of the basic business principles you need to do to stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, so I guess my story goes back a long way when I joined the telecom industry early on and observed that as we were going through pretty substantial changes, that we had some major challenges about how to win in a competitive environment and be relevant to customers. And so this whole notion of be different or be dead, which is kind of like my mantra, started then. And I started a journey to figure out how to be different in literally everything I could do. And so I would did strategic meandering around and up the organization until they finally, I guess, got tired of me doing that and asked me to take over the president's role of this data and internet company when the internet was just getting going. And so I took that challenge. And we just had it was a ride, man. It was a fast growing market. We did some simple fundamental things that resonated and lit fires.
What was the time frame there? Was that dial-up era or post-dial-up?
Oh yeah, I mean 1.5 megabits was super fast. I mean, I still got a hearing problem from that feedback, right, that you get with dial-up. But we knew that the potential was huge, and so we set upon this journey that, in retrospect, was quite amazing to me and the people that I worked with. And I get goosebumps when I think we got $1 billion in annual sales. Today that business is $18 billion a year.
Okay.
And I like to think that my team had a little bit to do with it.
So were you with that company your entire career, or what was the? Yeah,
I was actually. And, my kids would say, Dad, what on earth are you continuing to work for that communications company for so long? And I said, well, easy. It may be one employer, but it's a big company with super opportunities all over the place. So it wasn't a single kind of like a silo employer. Right. And I had opportunities to do everything in operations and marketing and sales. And I mean, about the only thing I didn't do because I didn't want to was finance, although I practiced obviously finance in the leadership roles I had.
Because I think that's one of the things entrepreneurs kind of struggle with is can you be an entrepreneur in a big company? Right. Yeah, and I tell people, yes, you can do that all the time if the company lets you. Right.
Well, I would go a step further. You can do it irrespective of what the company wants you to do or not. There's always ways. Look, it's easy to say, I couldn't succeed because they wouldn't let me. Okay. It's easy to say that, Gary, and it's nothing but a freaking cop-out, in my view. I mean, if you realize the pushback I got trying to be different in a telecom world that was highly unionized, very set in his ways, and yet here we have this internet opportunity that required us to do things differently, sitting in a traditional culture. Okay, so that was hard. That required us to be innovative and creative and entrepreneurial in spite of everybody else. And we did it, okay? But you have to like pain. I learned that pain indeed is a strategic concept. And unless you understand that and have it, you can't be an entrepreneur. So I resent the implication when people tell me, well, I can't do it because they won't let me. And I just say, well, clearly you're not wanting it enough and you're not looking hard enough and you're not trying enough. So get over yourself and get out there and do something.
And when reading through your material, the word audacious keeps coming up. How do you define that in terms of, kind of differentiating a mainstream everyday business and an audacious business?
Yeah. Well, audacious, of course, is connotes and is defined with such words as courageousness, as boldness, right? As astonishing. The whole notion of the word for me is getting out of the box and creating a new box. And you can't do that
Mhm.
Okay, you cannot be innovative and creative if you're playing inside the same box you've got, because then you end up horribly difficult competition,
Mhm.
and you end up basically copying what everybody else does. So audaciousness,
Mhm.
okay, running through your veins, in my view, drives you to be standing out, drives you to be different, drives you to innovate and create, without which, in my experience, you just can't do that. Now,
Mhm.
if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to be an entrepreneur that's busting the edge and creating new stuff and new value for people, that's okay. You don't
Right.
have to be audacious. But for me, it was a prerequisite. It energized me. It's
Mhm.
running through my veins. It forces me all the time to look for opportunities to step out, be different from the herd, and get on with it.
Mhm. So, can you give us an example of something audacious or out of the box you did at the company that you saw was needed to, lift their business? Like you said, it's a very mainstream sort of, I would say, routine business, but it kind of is. It builds infrastructure and it sells access to that infrastructure, right? I mean, that's kind of what a telecom company does. So what would be an example of
Well,
where you had to look at something and say, we're going to shake this up and we're going to get better results because of it?
Well, that's part of the problem. I mean, engineering dominated businesses are really hard to move off that. And
Yeah.
yet that's what we had to do. So we had to figure out how to make this a customer driven company.
Mhm.
Okay. And so literally, I mean, it's not one thing here is a point I want to make.
Mhm.
If you want to be successful, you have to do a lot of little things.
Right.
Okay. And you got to persevere at that. And so the kinds of things that we did were things that appeal to really the execution side of the house.
Sure.
Okay, so performance doesn't come from the plan, it comes from executing the plan. And so my whole world is around how can I get people bought in and passionate about execution? Well, one of the things that I did, silly little things, okay, we could have 16 hours of this, but a silly little thing was what I call cleanse the inside.
Mhm.
I mean, it sounds mundane, and it is, except that it's exceedingly powerful in terms of driving performance. Cleansing the inside of the organization was meant to get rid of the friction. If I
Mhm.
could get rid of the friction inside the organization, performance would go up and we'd get closer to the billion. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, okay, friction points, dumb
Mhm.
rules that customers hate. Okay, there's not an organization out there that doesn't have a rule that pisses their customers off. And yet we say no all the time to them. We push the policy, we push the procedure, etc. It
Mhm.
occurred to me that we needed to kill those things and
Sure.
increase the viscosity inside the organization and get things running smoothly. So I introduced this whole notion of killing dumb rules. I had dumb rules committees all over the organization and realized this organization was 9 or 10,000 people. It was not a small organization. And the purpose of the dumb rules committee was to identify things didn't make any sense to customers and help us get rid of them. If we couldn't get rid of them, we'd change them to at least make them customer friendly, because there's probably some around that satisfy legal requirements that you can't eliminate, but you sure as heck can morph them into something.
Mhm.
And so we had competitions. We celebrated dumb rules champions. A
Mhm.
simple little thing like that. And guess what? We eliminated the friction going on between us and the customer that led us to what I call a say yes culture.
Mhm.
Okay, because that was a drive. Say yes. Okay, remember, this was an engineering dominated, internal audit related company.
Right.
So when Roy starts talking about getting rid of friction and saying yes and looking for opportunities to say yes and not no, I mean,
Right.
what the hell? That was an incredible change. What are you thinking? And of course, pushback ensued, etc. So
Mhm.
the
Sure.
dumb rules piece was huge, but it was just one of many. And you know what happened? People loved it.
Mhm.
People absolutely loved it. We made it easier for them to do their jobs. Now, this is not rocket science,
Mhm.
because they have been telling us for years that we had rules that didn't make any sense to customers.
Right.
Please change them. Well, guess what? Nobody listened except Roy. When Roy started listening, things started happening and performance went through the roof.
Is that
just
because the engineering mindset is, we're going to build something, we're going to put it in place, and if it's broke, don't fix it?
Yeah, well, engineering is kind of a supply-oriented function. It's not a demand-oriented function.
Okay.
So we're going into a world where demand and all the intricacies and dimensions of demand, we're gonna really dictate our future.
Mhm.
So we had to figure that out. So the engineering guys were a little put off because that industry had always been engineering dominated. And look at that was important, incredibly important, and it's still incredibly important.
Sure.
Okay. It's just that the roles, okay, are changing. Okay. And it's a function of the environment. And so when you go from a monopoly into a competitive world, you had better take care of the demand side of the equation. And that's my conclusion was, in order to do that, I've got to have the operations part of this company humming. It's got to be absolutely humming. If it's not humming, we'll never drive performance and we won't drive revenues towards $1 billion.
So how are you measuring the success of getting rid of these dumb rules? Was it signups? Was it sales? Was it customer feedback? What was the metric you were using? If there were more than one, what were the top 2 or 3?
No, it's a great question. And the first thing I will say is I have no idea whether that specific program, worked in and of itself, because I did not do correlation analyses on each and everything. Everybody does that. It's a waste of time. What I did is I looked at my top line revenue and said, okay, am I meeting my targets? Am I getting the growth? Good. That means in total, things are working. Now, does it mean that 10% of that was due to dumb rules? I have no idea. And I would never try and figure that out. But what I do know is every employee survey that we did showed engagement was going through the roof. Every customer service survey we did show I was dazzling people. People were surprised and amazed with the fact that we were trying to say yes, Gary. Now, we didn't say yes to everything.
Right. You can't do that.
We said yes 3 times more today than we did yesterday. And people could see that. They could feel that, because people buy on the basis of passion and feelings. They don't buy on the basis of intellect whatsoever, at least in my experience. And so we tried not to complicate this, right? If top line was going, my conclusion was we're doing the right things. Let's keep pouring it. If a pinch point showed itself, then we'd look at the pinch point, make something. But no, I didn't get all tied up in detailed causation analysis, even though I would like to, because my degree is in mathematics. So I would have thought that was cool, but I didn't do it.
So did this process lead you also into like new product development, where you were getting you were reducing friction? Maybe they weren't engineering products per se, but maybe there was a package or a bundle or something like that it led to that also spurred growth.
Yeah, I think the first objective that we had was to be able to create what I call gasp-worthy experiences for people, because my logic was if they were feeling good about us, they're going to keep doing business with us somehow. Okay, and so the doing business with us then said, all right, what are the unsatisfied parts of the business? Like, products and services, in my view, are dissatisfiers. In other words, people expect you to have a robust portfolio of products. That's why you're in business. Right. They expect those products to work. If you sell them a 6 megabit or gigabit internet service, they expect that puppy to be up 24/7, 365. And when it is, they don't actually give you a call and say, Roy, that was the most amazing internet stream I've ever had in my life.
Right.
They don't do that because they just expect it. But what they will do is if they've enjoyed doing business with you, if they've loved dealing with your people, okay, that's what they remember, okay? That's what creates loyalty. So my priority was get the products working, okay? There's absolutely no rocket science, okay, in the kinds of technical capabilities we have coming up in the internet. Make sure we're in front, okay, or at least with the crowd up on top. And then we're going to go out to service experience. And that's going to be our differentiation strategy. And it worked. Okay, we had all the services, but we didn't compete on those services. We competed on the other things that wrapped around the services, right? Like the experience. You mentioned packages. That's a great lead in. That's one thing that we did do. Okay. And because, we hated bundles. Bundles are just a dishonest person's way of passing on lower prices. That's all that is.
It's a drawer full of crap.
It's absolute crap. But value-based bundles, okay, because I'm a premium price guy. I want to look for ways to get the price up, not the price down.
Exactly.
And adding value to that, we got some great ideas from dealing with customers in those moments, okay, where they were doing business with us. And we fed them into marketing and we did a lot of trials, and we recognized the customer's contribution and specific names, et cetera. It was a ball. We had a good time.
So did this lead you into new and different markets, like retail stores or anything like that? Or is that just to improve that? Or, I'm just saying, I'm trying to get a grasp on where this process can lead you. Because what happens, I think, with a lot of companies that especially come with an engineering base is they tend to want to refine, and perhaps not grow.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is the strategy we've been talking about led to grow. Right. It was because the retention piece was so strong and the referral piece was so strong that it really didn't matter what the hell we were offering in terms of an engineering defined product. They trusted us. I mean, we created this campaign called "The Future is Friendly." My company, by the way, was TELUS, national telecom company in Canada. The future is friendly. That campaign I introduced in 2002, and it's still here 21 years later. And all it is a campaign based on saying to you, customer, I know technology is changing on you fast, and it may be disconcerting, but don't worry. We're going to take the angst of that away, and we're going to help you through it. We're going to give you the absolute premium kinds of services. We'll help you understand them. We'll help you get the benefits from them. We're here for you. Boom. That's all it took. Look at people think growing a business is complicated. It's complicated because there are sort of narratives out there promulgating tactical stuff, that quite frankly needs to be looked at in that perspective. If you're in the business of creating magical experiences, then you're on the right track. Now, then the objective is to feed everything underneath that within that context. But if you choose to be a product flogger, you're in trouble because everybody else is doing the same thing. You're going to be competing on price. Right. Your margins are going to go down the tubes, and your customers will not be loyal to you because everybody's in the product flogging business. So reframe the business, guys. Look for ways to be different. Look at the experience. Look at being the only one that does what you do. Right. And by the way, that was another innovation that I came up with. That not just then, but right now when I work with clients is absolutely amazing. It says, don't try and be better. Don't try and be the best. Don't try and be number one. Don't try and be market leader. Because basically, when you declare that, it's all BS. Right. It's all BS. It doesn't mean anything. So I came up with this notion called the only statement. And it says, what you really want to be is you want to be the only one that does what you do. Only. It's binary. It can be observed. It can be measured. You want to be the only one that does what you do. One of the biggest problems with small business and entrepreneurs is they don't think that through. They enter the marketplace flogging products, which are basically not any different, and they don't think through this notion of differentiation and how to be the only ones that do what they do. And I do a lot of work with small companies on that, and it's just amazing when they catch on to that. Just freaking delightful.
What is the biggest, like the surprise when you said you work with a company, you consult with a company, and you said, it was a big surprise when they got it? What was the thing that happened there?
Well, let me give you an example.
Sure.
Because I just think it's an amazing story because I was part of it. So I did some work for this company out in Eastern Canada that were in the boat selling business. So their business was selling boats to dealers. Right. And they gave me a call and said, can you come in and help us create a strategy? So the reason they did that is I've had to develop my own strategic game planning process, which is literally in 48 hours, you have a strategy, which is completely unlike what anybody else does, right? Goes 6 or 7 months and costs billions. Anyway, so I go back there and put this together. We reach the part of the process where we have to create an only statement, okay? Because that's part of the process. Forget about what you've done. You got to be unique in something that your customers care about. That's the whole purpose behind only. Sure. And we worked through it, and they finally said to me, look we sell boats. There's a lot of people that sell boats, Roy. We're not particularly special in that. And I said, well, okay, you're looking at it wrong. Okay. Tell me what the boat dealers really desire. What do they really want? What keeps them up at night? And don't tell me it's boats that float. Okay. Because everybody expects a boat to float. So we talked through this and discovered that what the boat dealers craved, what kept them awake at night, was being able to grow their business.
Right.
Nothing to do with boats. So I said, okay, why don't we play with the idea of trying to create a unique capability around helping your target customer, the dealers, grow their business? And they went, yeah, we could do that. So here's the only statement we came up with. This company, quote, is the only complete service partner, not seller, committed to delivering solutions to grow a boat dealer's business. So what we did is we created an only statement around what they had to be in order to grow, as opposed to what they were. What they were flogging boats. What they had to be was an instrument of growth for their customers. And when we landed on that, Gary, the surprise and aha, just they went through the roof. And it is so cool because they're the only one in the market doing that, and the boat dealers around them, or the boat sellers, are kind of going, what are they doing?
Right.
But that's an example of how powerful this can be. And it's kind of like an experience I get from working with most small businesses that ask me to give them a hand.
Yeah, because I can see that, because I mean, we're not living in the 1970s or 60s anymore, where there was a great differential in product quality, right? I remember, I think we're probably close to the same age in terms of experience and decades and things. So we won't go there, but we'll just assume you were around in the 60s and 70s. And if things were bought from a certain country, you knew they weren't going to be as good a quality. These days, everything's good, no matter the country of origin, right? You buy it from China, Taiwan, Vietnam, or whatever, the quality is going to be excellent in most cases. If you want to buy a hat, you go on Amazon, you don't even care where it comes from. You just want it delivered. So if you're a hat retailer, you got to find a way to differentiate yourself other than that. And literally in photography, it's the same thing. A camera is a camera, a camera. How are you going to build that business around understanding your customer and finding and growing their business?
Well, there's a couple of points in this. First thing is, I find that most businesses don't spend enough time defining who they want to serve. Look, at my strategy building process is, how big do you want to be? Which is a statement of saying, in 24 months, what do you want your top line to be? My process is different. It starts out with numbers. Numbers drives the strategy, which kind of makes sense to me. Second question is, where are you going to get the money? That's who you're going to serve. Okay. That's a really important piece. Trying to get clarity around the target customers you've got and what they crave. So it's not just a matter of picking the segments. It's doing a deep dive and say, what do they crave? Why is that important? Well, it's important because when we start to develop the only statement, which is your competitive advantage claim, we play to those cravings, not what they need.
Right.
The cravings market is not price sensitive. The cravings market doesn't have any competition.
Right.
Duh, what's the conclusion? Gee, I think we should be in the cravings business. That's what I'm saying. It's nothing to do with products. Nothing to do with products. And product quality, the assumption is everything works.
Right.
Now, what are you going to compete on? Don't talk to me about product quality. I don't care, because it doesn't matter. What I care about is, what are you going to wrap that around with? What kind of passionate envelope are you going to present to people when they show up at your door, either online or offline? Don't give them an FAQ that never relates to what they're really interested in.
Right.
And yet, it's all over the place, over the place. And you know what? It upsets me. It upsets me.
Well, you're a passionate guy. I can see that.
No, it's just unfortunate. The people are being led astray. I call it textbook thinking. Okay.
Right.
Okay, like you were talking about total quality management a few minutes ago. Do it right the first time, right? Get the product quality, right? Meeting specifications. I got news for you. Nobody cares about that in a competitive world anymore, unless it doesn't work. If it doesn't work that way, they're gone. But if it does, you get a C on your report card.
Right.
You don't get an A. They're not loyal to you because the internet stream works. They're loyal to you because of the other things that you do for them. It appeals to the right side of the brain, not the left. Getting
back to that audacious word, you have a concept you use called audacious leadership. Can you talk about like the four main pieces of that after you define it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, audacious leadership is all about creating new boxes. Okay. It starts out with the notion that says, I got to find a way to create a new box. Not just think outside the box. It's actually execute in new boxes. So part of it is starts out there with that sort of mindset. Secondly, you have to really accept that pain is going to be your buddy your entire life as a leader. If you choose to go down that route, you're gonna have pain. The third thing I would say is you need to keep it simple. Audaciousness is interesting, right? It's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's not complicated. Audacious is actually stepping out of complexity and entering the world of simplicity in a way that lights fires in people. And you as a leader have to discover that. And the only way you can do that is you have to embed yourself in the front line. I mean, I spent probably 40% of my week embedded in the front line in my organization. I call it leadership by serving around, not managing around.
Right.
And the whole idea was, how can I help, Gary? What's going on? How can I help? Now, it wasn't just a cool thing to do. The whole thing was based on, if I can help you, you will perform better, and my billion is coming closer. So the whole thing was related to execution, right?
Right.
So simplicity, think of new boxes. Get an advocacy army. You need an army of advocates for what you're doing here, because you're going to be on your own, and people will hope you fail because you're trying to do something really, really, really
some
different.
people don't like change, right? So they are going to throw up some roadblocks here and there.
Well, it's a fear thing, and so what I discovered was the more success we had and the more we communicated that, the less fear people had around us over what we were doing. Right. So that's really, really important. But if you're trying new things just to do new things, if you're trying to be different just to be different, people see through that, and they will correctly tag you as being intellectually dishonest, you're right, and a phony. And that's not what this is. I mean, I remember when we were going through this, I mean, there would be nights that I'd be up at 2:00 in the morning with this stuff just running through my veins. I can't sleep. I can't sleep. I've got some stuff that I got to get out, because I know the next day we've got a results meeting, and we're going to have a tough time because they were dipping a bit, and I got a bunch of. It's just like this thing. This isn't about work balance.
Right.
And for those out there that believe work balance is the way to succeed, never worked for me. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying, hey, this is a guy that got $1 billion in annual sales. Never worked for me. I didn't balance my life to get $1 billion.
So again, what are some of the things when we say outside the box, I mean, you still got to be sort of in the playground, right? Because I mean, you always have things like the classic examples of, Adidas tried to get into cologne because they thought their brand would extend to personal care products, right? So I mean, there's clearly a limit to some of this stuff, right?
Well, first of all, I want to go back. Okay, let's not fuss with this at a tactical level. My first question to you is, okay, who are you trying to serve?
Right.
And what do they crave?
Right.
I'm not willing to have a conversation unless I clearly understand that. And the reason for that is I'm just going to give you a bunch of mumbo jumbo textbook stuff at a tactical level. Okay. I'm not going to do it. It's like people keep saying, Roy, what do you think of my social media strategy? And I keep saying, I have no idea. None. What are you trying to achieve?
Right.
Let me understand that, and then I'll give you an opinion. So it all depends. I would say categorically that if your stupid idea, quote unquote, resonates with the cravings of your target market, then it's a great idea. Do it. Right. If it doesn't, don't be a fool. This isn't a matter of innovating for innovation's sake, Gary. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
Who do you want to serve? What do they crave? Talk to me. Once I understand that, and then you show me how your silly idea relates to that, then we can have a conversation. And by the way, my friend, that piece is missing in conversations these days. It is totally missing. But there are some examples, and I don't know whether they went through this. There are some examples that come to my mind of what I would call contrarian entrepreneurs. Okay. Good. One is the Heart Attack Grill in Las Vegas. Yep. Now, Heart Attack Grill is not only audacious, they're a very unhealthy place to go to, and it's strategic. I mean, they sell triple bypass burgers, and their restaurants, okay, their servers are dressed as doctors and nurses, and orderlies, and if you're over 350 pounds, you can eat for free. And look at, they have, just check it out. They're off the chart audacious, right? But they've chosen a particular strategy, all right, that resonates with a certain segment of the population.
Right.
And they're going at it. Uber's another one. They reinvented the taxi industry. Okay. Airbnb is another one. They totally distorted, right, and disrupted, right, the vacation club property business. I'm assuming that they had a target market and cravings in mind. They may not have in my language, but pretty close, because it resonated. It really resonated with people. So that's the challenge. So if you're a small business just getting into business, do the due diligence on your target market. I mean, that's hard work, okay? Because you'd rather flog your product, right?
Yeah.
You'd rather take your product and go sell it. Well, this is not a selling business. This is a convincing business, because it's the demand side of the equation, right?
Right.
And I find it it's just hard work, and people don't seem to want to do it, and yet they're willing to throw a lot of money at this, Gary, and they wonder why they're part of the casualties of a new business, because they're dead in 36 months. I can tell you why. They haven't done the hard work up front. You need to do the hard work up front.
Well, and that's sort of the idea that, the mass market is gone, right? The mass market is not even in play anymore. And if it is, it's consumed by players you can't, like Amazon and whatnot. Let them deal with the mass market.
Well, look, if you've got scale economies of scale and scope, then you can talk volume a certain way, because it plays into your strength. Most of us mortals don't have that ability.
Right.
Okay, so I say to you mortals, get real clear on who you want to serve. I know I'm being repetitive, but I
sure no. But
who you want to
it's
serve
to kind of hammer it home, because I see this all the time in my industry, right? Where they're trying to, they want to compete against the 8-cent prince against that person. And it's like, let that those aren't your people. Let them go.
Well, exactly. And one of the reasons that my process starts out with how big do you want to be is because the who to serve piece, which is the target markets, is actually created by answering the question, which target customer groups have the latent potential to deliver my how big?
Right.
So it's all linked. And so if you've missed that, and it's possible, I mean, if you missed it, then, you have to kind of like revise it on the run and so forth. But that's okay. The strategic game plan in my world is a draft, Gary. It's never right. It's never perfect. All right. It's an organic entity that needs to be, revised on the run. But if you're not clear on that one question, you're in trouble.
Well, and the reality is, because I've run into this with people who want to address a certain niche market, for example, and then that market's just not big enough to sustain a business, right? You need to be able to adapt from that. You can't just commit that I'm going to only serve left-handed photographers, right? And only because I'm going to make products that, instead of shooting a shutter with their right hand, it's going to shoot with their left hand, right? It's just,
Part of the problem is the process that they're using.
Right.
Okay. What they're doing is figuring out a strategy, executing it, and then looking at the financials. That's the wrong way to go about it.
Right.
You start out with the numbers,
right?
You create a strategy to deliver
the market, right?
The decisions you make are all based on how big do you want to be in 24 months, by the way, because 5-year plans are a waste of time, because the fourth year never shows up. It just doesn't. And it gives you permission to put everything off until the 4th and 5th year.
Right.
But if you're sitting at $1 million and you say, okay, I want to be 5, right? So your how big question is, I'm going to grow my business from 1 to 5. The next question, who are you going to serve to get there, basically says, all right, the challenge now is to identify the customer groups that have the latent potential to give me the extra money. Right. Those are the people you serve. So your comment about mass markets is absolutely right. This whole process to growth has got dick all to do with mass markets for most of us, unless you're into scale and scope economies. Once you get that through your head, magic happens, because you get really succinct, you get granular, you get focused, and that enables execution, and you start to grow beyond your wildest dreams. Guaranteed. How do I know that? Because I did it.
Mm-hmm. So where can people go to get more information about your process and what you do?
Yeah, sure. I have a website, bedifferentorbedead.com. So please come and visit me there. I blog every week. And I've been blogging on Be Different or Be Dead, and the whole stuff that you and I have just talked about, Gary, since 2009. So there's a ton of content out there. You can look up my strategic game plan. You can look up killing dumb rules. You can look up cutting the crap. You can look up hiring for goosebumps. You can look up line of sight management and all like those sorts of things that I had the opportunity to do. You can also find out my books. I've written 7 books. The latest one is Audacious, Unheard of Ways I Took a Startup to $1 billion. So that's available. Mm-hmm. And I have an email. It's roy.osing@gmail.com. And please email me. I love to have a conversation with anybody on this sort of stuff. And, it's really kind of cool because I get people sending me an email saying, Roy, I just drafted my only statement. What do you think? Oh,
and do they share them with you?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And we go back and forth and I give them a perspective and et cetera. So, I guess the only way I can handle this to make a difference is kind of like engage one at a time. Or I love these conversations, by the way. It's just so much of an opportunity to hopefully make a difference and get people to shift off the inertia that is and the momentum that's so strong out there in terms of doing things the old ways.
Yeah. There's a lot of barnacles out there that need to be shaken off.
Yeah.
To going back to your boat analogy. See, I was going back to that.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for that.
All right, Roy, listen, it's great to meet you. Looking forward to emailing you in the future and checking out your books. And thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. Read more great stories and sign up for the newsletter at www.thedeadpixelssociety.com.